What is Highway? Highway is a new cross-chain protocol built on Mosaic chain. I believe that, for most of you, this does not mean much, so let's explain it. Cross-chain protocols, also known as operators or bridges, serve as bridges between different blockchain networks. They make it possible for tokens, data, or messages to be transferred from one chain to another, because those chains otherwise cannot communicate directly with each other. In practice, they allow a user to use value from one ecosystem in another. For example, to move funds from Ethereum to Solana, Polkadot, BNB chain, or some other blockchain. This is necessary because these are separate networks, with different rules, different economies, and no ability to see one another without a bridge. There is no precise global number of bridges in public statistics, but we will not be far off if we say that today there are around 20 important bridge protocols, with only a few hundred relayers in total, that together maintain a significant part of the cross-chain infrastructure. In order to fully understand why someone would decide to launch a completely new bridge protocol alongside already existing solutions, we first need to understand the weaknesses of the existing ones. Let's go step by step. All the computers that are commonly called relayers in the cross-chain industry are, in most cases, under the control of private companies or small teams that manage specific protocols. Each of those networks usually operates with a relatively small number of individual relayers, validators, guardians, or similar operators, so it can be said that, in many existing models, we are talking about dozens, not thousands, of independent participants. On the other hand, Highway, already in its pre-sale phase, currently has around 3,000 relayers that are not owned by one company, but by several thousand independent individuals around the world. They obtained their relayer rights during the crowdfunding phase, which began in August 2025 and is still ongoing. Bloxico, an IT company from Belgrade and the conceptual and development driving force behind this project, has practically given the ordinary person the opportunity, for the first time in modern history, to become a participant in a significant infrastructure, and not only its user. By the way, the launch of the first V1 version of the Highway project is just around the corner, while the launch of the V2 version, with an expected 6,000 relayers, is planned for the end of the second quarter of 2027. So, the point is clear. Highway is writing completely new rules of the game and introducing new standards, bringing not only declarative decentralization, but true decentralization of a kind that practically does not exist in that market at this moment. Decentralization is indeed a crucial factor, but if you thought that decentralization alone was the only reason why Bloxico decided to take action, you were wrong. According to publicly available data, especially for the year 2022, Chainalysis stated that about $2 billion were stolen through 13 separate cross-chain bridge hacks, and that bridge attacks accounted for 69% of all stolen funds in the crypto industry that year, up to that point. The same analysis states that bridges are becoming an attractive target because a huge amount of value passes through them, and because they often have a central point where collateral is locked. The number of hacker attacks and the amount of stolen funds vary from year to year, but it can definitely be said that cross-chain bridges are still one of the Achilles heels of the blockchain market. What does Highway change when it comes to security? Highway does not protect cross-chain communication through a small group of known servers, but through a global network of thousands of independent relayers, additionally protected by a Nebula VPN layer. Every hour, a new active set is selected randomly, so an attacker does not know in advance which nodes must be compromised, nor does he have enough time to attack them in a planned way. That is why an attack on Highway is not an attack on one company, one bridge, or a few signers, but an attempt to overcome a huge, decentralized, and rotating network. It is precisely this combination of massive decentralization, random rotation, and network protection that makes Highway a multi-layered security system and raises the cost complexity, and risk of every attack to a completely new level. Although it may seem that the two reasons already mentioned are more than enough to justify the birth of Highway, the story does not end there. Here is why. With many existing cross-chain bridges, the user often has to understand which blockchain he is on, which token he is using, which wrapped token he will receive, whether he has enough gas tokens on both networks, which bridge is safe, which protocol he needs to choose, and how many steps he has to confirm. For the average user, this is complicated, stressful, and often confusing. In its first version, within the Polkadot ecosystem, Highway plans bridges to Ethereum, BSC, and Solana, with the goal of making the transfer of funds as simple as possible, practically with one click. Instead of forcing the user to think about the technical background, relayers, routes, and networks, Highway hides the complexity of the system and shows the user only what matters, what he is sending, where he is sending it, and how much he is receiving. To make this even clearer, here is a concrete example. Let's imagine a user who wants to move USDC from Solana into the Polkadot ecosystem. With a classic bridge, he often has to choose the network, check the supported token, understand the fees, confirm several transactions, and make sure he does not send funds through the wrong route. With Highway, the user selects Solana as the source, Polkadot as the destination, enters the amount, and confirms the transfer with one simple click. Now stop for a moment and think for yourself. Based on what you have heard so far, do you have a reason to believe that Highway will become a significant cross-chain operator in the time ahead? Or do you still doubt it? We could say that everything we have said so far sounds very promising. However, what is all that worth if Highway charges high fees for its services, right? Well, in the world of cross-chain transfers, the user often faces two major problems: high costs and slow execution. Sometimes transferring smaller amounts costs almost as much, or even more, than the funds the user wants to send. In addition, a transfer can take several minutes, several hours, and in some cases even a day or two. Highway changes that as well. Its goal is for cross-chain transfer to be not only secure and simple, but also many times cheaper than the most affordable solutions currently on the market. Instead of a complicated process with multiple steps, multiple fees, slow manual or multi-layered procedures, and uncertain waiting times, Highway uses a huge dedicated network of relayers that constantly monitor connected blockchains and are ready to react immediately. When a user starts a transfer, the system does not go through a slow and complicated process. Active relayers quickly confirm the event, forward the message, and enable execution on the other network in just a few seconds. So, up to this point, we have heard the key advantages of Highway compared to existing cross-chain solutions. Greater decentralization, a stronger security model, simpler use, higher speed, and lower transfer costs. Now you probably understand much more clearly why Bloxico decided to launch a completely new cross-chain protocol. However, everything we have said so far was mainly related to future users of Highway, to the people who will use it to send funds, data, and messages between different blockchain networks. But Highway is not open only to users. Its crowdfunding phase is still ongoing, and thousands of people around the world have already recognized the opportunity to take part in building this infrastructure from the very beginning. A logical question arises: what kind of financial viability can participation in the Highway project bring? The answer is potentially twofold. The first is short-term. Through an organized referral system or network-based recommendation model, participants can earn commissions for directly and team-based expansion of the project. These commissions are paid according to the current compensation plan, depending on the package and the achieved sales volume. For example, if you directly sell a package worth $1,500, you earn $135 in direct D1 commission. And if the person you directly brought in sells the same package, You earn another $90 in D2 commission, provided that you meet the simple conditions of the compensation plan. The second, and much more important one, is long-term viability. By purchasing the offered highway packages, a participant is not buying just another digital product. He obtains proportional rights in the relayer infrastructure that will participate in processing cross-chain transactions. This means that future passive income can come from several sources. The first source is transaction fees. Every time users use Highway to transfer funds between networks, part of the fees belongs to the relayer infrastructure that enables that transfer. The second source is arbitrage. Cross-chain markets often have price differences between different blockchain ecosystems, and Highway infrastructure can participate in using those differences through automated arbitrage mechanisms. The third source is staking H-Way tokens. Participants who hold and stake H-Way tokens can earn additional rewards through the protocol's own economy. On August 25, 2025, an internal hypothetical model was created with the help of several advanced AI tools, into which available project and market data were entered. The goal of that model was to show what kind of potential income could arise if Highway reaches all the defined parameters in the future. That hypothetical scenario included, among other things, the following. Highway uses a network of 6,000 relayers, captures around 2% of the global cross-chain market, has access to a large number of exchanges for arbitrage, connects 10 leading blockchain networks, achieves significant daily volume, and has liquidity of around $50 million. On the other hand, current data from the DeFi Llama platform were used as the real market framework, according to which approximately $300 million currently passes through cross-chain bridges every day, around $2.2 billion weekly, and around $10.7 billion monthly. In other words, the model does not start from the unrealistic assumption that Highway must capture the entire market, but from a scenario in which it captures a relatively small share, around 2% of already existing cross-chain volume, which could still represent significant business potential. You can see the result of that model in the table. This table does not include possible income from staking H-Way tokens. This means that the numbers shown represent only hypothetical income from transfer fees and arbitrage, while staking may represent an additional source of income, but its amount will depend on future tokenomics, APY, and the market value of the H-Way token. We have to say this completely clearly. The numbers you see in the table are not a promise of earnings, and must not be understood that way. This is only a hypothetical calculation, based on the assumption that Highway reaches a certain volume, a certain level of liquidity, a certain market share, and real usage by users. When can this be achieved? No one can seriously answer that today. Any claim such as in a year or two would be irresponsible. The final decision will be made by the market, that is, by users, usage volume, and the popularity that Highway manages to achieve in practice. As a summary of everything listed regarding earnings, in the short term, Highway offers the possibility of active earnings through promotion and the referral system, according to the current compensation plan. In the long term, it opens the possibility of participating in the income of a cross-chain infrastructure through transaction fees, arbitrage, and staking. That is why the essence of Highway is not only in the possibility of earnings, but in an early position inside an infrastructure that is trying to solve one of the biggest problems of the blockchain market: secure, fast, and cheap communication between chains. Of course, as with any early-stage project, results depend on development, launch, adoption, and the real usage volume of the network. But that is precisely why this phase is important, because the greatest opportunities often open before the infrastructure becomes widely known and massively used.